Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Career Talk session by Grad Australia. My name is Emily, and I'll be your host for today. So before we begin this session, I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of the country. As we gather for this meeting, physically dispersed and virtually constructed, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and by doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. We acknowledge the elders, past and present, of all the land we work and live on, and their ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples here today. I'm on the call and I'm joining from Brisbane, which is the traditional land of the Turrbal people. So to introduce myself, my name's Emily. I'm one of the hosts here. We host weekly webinar sessions at Grad Australia, which can cover anything from, general career advice to interview tips to CV tips to specific tips in industries like engineering for today, for example. And for those of you who don't know what Grad Australia is, it's a graduate career site where you can explore and get to know graduate employers. You get this backstage pass to see what it's like working in a role with them, their organization, how you can apply for the programs. And you also get notified of open opportunities and when they're closing once you create an account as well. So today's session is called Women in Engineering, Carving Out a Career as a Female in Engineering Consulting. And we have three guests joining us today. So we have from GHD, we have Marielle, who is an assistant project manager. And then from Aurecon, we have Jane, who is a practice leader of Roads New South Wales. And then we have Renny, who is an engineer of water from New South Wales. And I just want to hand it over we'll start with Marielle first. Just give yourself a little introduction, who you are, what you do at GHD, and then we'll pass it around to Jane and then Renny next.
Sounds good. Thanks, Emily. I'm Marielle. I'm a graduate project manager at GHD. So I've worked on a variety of projects, mostly infrastructure projects such as the Northeast Link project, and I'm currently working on a New Zealand public housing program. Most of my role consists of project management, but I do oversee some engineering work and some architectural work at the moment. I'll pass it on.
Thanks, Marielle. Hi, everyone. Jane Waldburger here. So currently I lead our roads and highways team in New South Wales and ACT. But my career's been quite opportunistic up and down the east coast of Australia. I started as an undergrad, did 2 years of undergraduate work at Aurecon, then got into a graduate role in our building structures team. Decided I wanted a sea change, not engineering change, just a physical location change. So a role was going in transport and I was on site for a year. I've gone up to central Queensland in flood recovery works, which is really exciting in that it's not standard or responding to general standards and the approval gates, because we needed to get emergency access to communities that were cut off through some significant weather events. I've come down the East Coast. I've managed Aurecon's Newcastle office across market. I've done internal change management down in Victoria. I've led client portfolios and now I'm leading our roads team. So quite a varied career to date, 18 years at Aurecon, and very happy to be here and share some insights.
Thanks, Marielle and Jane and Emily. It's such a privilege to be here. So I'm Renny. I work at Aurecon. My career starts, I started off as a pilot. I went on to do modeling. I did research and development at the University of Newcastle. And then I moved into water utility, where I did mostly operations, wastewater treatment operations and water and recycled water network operations, which was really exciting and robust. I felt like my career in operations prepared me for a role in consulting. From a utility, I moved to Aurecon, where I worked on a number of projects. I'm currently still with Aurecon, but working on secondment in the energy team at Sydney Water, and that's where I'm dialing in from today. So yeah, it's a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for the intro. So just to anyone watching, I also want to let you guys know that if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. This is the time to ask them. We'll be going through some set questions that we have, but definitely ask any questions, anything at all. Now's the time for that. And we'll just be answering them from the comments throughout the entire webinar. So let's start off with our first question, which is actually for Renny. So just want to talk about what is the difference between engineering and engineering consulting?
Yeah, no, great. Thank you so much. And I think that's a really great question, actually, because it is something that I didn't know much about. So I'm going to try and be very comprehensive. So I hope you guys are just going to bear with me for a bit, because there's so many facets to actually addressing this question well. Okay, so when I was putting together my notes, I thought, let's really try and define the different streams. So I've worked in roles where I've done a 9 to 5. And in that situation, I just get to work in the beginning of my day. And at 5 o'clock, I get out at the end of the day and don't have to worry about where that money's coming from or put in a timesheet or anything like that. All I have to do is to just do my job and I'll get paid somehow. Didn't have to worry or think about it. Whereas when I started working as and then I also worked in a water utility where I got introduced to the idea of timesheets. I did my 9 to 5, but everything that I worked on a project had to be attributed. That time had to be attributed to a certain project. So most of my days were just, business as usual work, but anything to do with major projects like a detailed design on, a Hunter Water's first desalination or recycled water schemes, I had to count those hours and put them towards a different timesheet or get paid from a different stream of money. So that was my first introduction to timesheets. And so a big part of, I guess, consulting for me that changed from the other jobs that I'd done up until this point was this ability to be able to understand that time is money. Everything that I do has to be attributed to a particular project. And so I learned, I guess also operations had prepared me a lot for this actually. I learned that as soon as I get in through the door, every single bit of my time has to be allocated to a specific project. And so I learned how to allocate those hours to a particular project. I guess the other thing I want to share at this point as well is with consultants, as opposed to maybe when I did my other job, there is this perception of us consultants as when you see us in a room, we're kind of selling ourselves, selling our skills. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I have had experience being a manager in a utility space where I had power to get consultants to do certain jobs for me. Most consultants would want to see me when I went to, Engineers Australia events and different things and tell me, what we're doing, we can do this for you and things like that. So, consultants are trying to build business, trying to network, trying to get, trying to make sure that the people that they can support with their skills know what they're doing. The one thing that I do want to say though, even though consultants may have a reputation maybe of selling their skills, etc. I actually think customer service in an engineering space is something that you should do regardless of whether you're a consultant. I learned very early on in my career that, every single person I come into contact with is my customer. All of my stakeholders are expecting me to do great work, and I want to make sure I do great work. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to introduce is this idea of a contractor as well. I worked as a contractor when I first started at Hunter Water. And that was through a recruitment company. And that recruitment company was paid, when Hunter Water paid me, they paid the recruitment company and the recruitment company paid for me. But I went to work every day as a Hunter Water employee. So that's as an engineer, as a contractor. The other thing is that as a contractor as well, you can also have your own ABN and be your own business, so to speak, and then you can work, let's just say, for a company like Hunter Water and still give your skills, but they're actually paying your business. Okay, another concept around consulting and contractor being together as well. When I worked at Hunter Water, I used to manage projects, and within those projects, our contractors were actually doing the design, the detailed design, the concept design, and sometimes they didn't have the skills within their consulting firm, so they would have to get somebody else to do that work for them, and that was their contractor. So they were reporting to our consultants, and those consultants were reporting to us. So just, I guess it's a bit of a knowledge in our engineering space that there is a whole range of ways that you can work as a consultant, as a contractor, and as an engineer who just does 9 to 5. The other thing is that I've been really interested in watching when I was at Hunter Water as well, is the difference between a consulting mentality and an engineering and just a 9 to 5. I don't want to say engineering, but just a general 9 to 5 role. Is that when you walk into a room, like I would watch our contractors and I would watch like our everyday employees sometimes, um, they your consultants will come in within 2 minutes. They're set up and they're typing away and busy, because they know time is money. They have to allocate each and every moment to a particular project. Whereas sometimes, we could, walk around, hi, how are you going? How's everything going? Because, we didn't necessarily have to allocate. We want to make sure that every single dollar goes towards a project. And we want to make sure that when we're working for our clients get the most out of our efforts. Yeah, it isn't to say that it's not good to say hello and stop and say hello and things. It's just to give a bit of an indicator of what that looks like. Yeah, I think I've covered it. If I've left anything else, let me know.
I might just add, I think, because if a lot of you in the audience are undergrads and looking for employment, the contractor side of things Renny reflected on is probably a little C contractor where you're a sole trader. Whereas we do often work with, and a lot of engineers are employed by big C, capital C contractors. So the way that consultants and big capital C contractors work together is often in D&C contracts, so design and construct contracts. So the background that I have in roads and infrastructure, that's where a lot of our major projects are held under those types of contracts. So the contractors, the big players might be Acciona, CPB, Ferrovial, Gamuda, Seymour White, John Holland. They engage the likes of Aurecon or GHD or other consultants to do the design work for them, because the contractors, they're largely a blue collar organization, and they have the investment in the plant, the equipment, the materials, and the personnel to run their contracts, but they don't carry that expertise down through design. So that's where a lot of us as consultants, we're in design consultancy, design engineering consultancy. So there's just another consideration. I was reflecting and smiling when Renny was talking about time is money. Like, certainly in consulting, we sell our people and our people sell time. That's how we all make money, and the businesses that we work for make money. But I think it's really important. In the last 10 years, I've certainly seen a shift that, people are so important. People are the only asset that our businesses have. And if our people don't feel valued, see that they've got the development opportunities, enjoy their time at work, because pre-COVID, physically, we would be spending more than half of our life at a physical office. And now we're able to be a little bit more agile around that. And if our people aren't enjoying that time, that huge portion of their life, what's the point? So I think, that's not limited to consulting or designers. But there's certainly been a huge shift in the Australian landscape just around how important people are. So I wouldn't be scared off about the time is money. It is a reality. But we certainly want to be having fun at work as well.
Yeah, can I just add, Jane, actually just reminded me about a point that I remembered, this concept of being billable, actually, because nobody explained that to me before I went into a consulting firm. So it's one thing for us to say, don't scare off, but I think it's nice to have the reality as well presented, because I didn't know about that. So for me, for instance, the expectation is on me to spend 80% of my time on projects and 20% of my time on other things. So, if you work a 7 or 8 hour day, you're very conscious that you need to spend 80% of your time on projects and 20% of your time on other things. So that changes how you work a little bit, on non-project meetings, I've learned to multitask, continue with my project work, but also listening in on the side. contributing where I need to, because there's only so much time in a day. And if 80% of my time needs to be on those other things, I can't do certain other things as everybody else would do. So that's something that you just need to be mindful of, which is different to anything else or any other way that I've worked in the past. So yeah, that's just a note, because I didn't expect that. But it's taught me a lot about how to manage my time and how to be extra productive during those moments.
I think that one comes with a warning though, and Marielle perhaps, oh, Marielle's just dropped off, but I think, you know, working in a virtual setting and working hybridly, how COVID has taught us, we've got to be careful around that multitasking, and consultants, we just do it all the time. But if you are truly multitasking in a meeting, if I'm here typing an email whilst I'm doing this talk, I'm not giving the full attention to one or the other. So often those meetings that we might be multitasking in, it's just sort of a prompt of a question of, am I adding value? Am I getting value out of this? Do I need to be here? And then it's also a question to the meeting organizers. Does this really need to be an hour? Does it need to be half an hour? Can we get this done in 5 minutes over coffee? Like, often that's more efficient. So yeah, it's certainly something that is not limited to engineering.
Awesome. That kind of ties into what I was wanting to ask my next question. So this is for everyone, but we'll start with Jane. The question is, what does a typical day as an engineering consultant involve? So Renny, before you mentioned how, you know, there's like, sometimes you have to organize your time accordingly. So that would be really interesting to hear. So Jane, would you like to start? And then we'll go around with Marielle and then Renny.
Yeah, certainly. So I think it's important for our undergrads and grads to know, as consultants, what part of a project we will work on and the life cycle of a project. So in consulting, we can start right at the early pre-strategic design, getting economic analysis, business case approval, gates. You know, one of my big clients, Transport for New South Wales, will be engaging us to do that type of work. That type of work, we all use our economists, but they can't do everything. They need some technical input. So that's where the engineers come in. So that's right at the early starts of even getting projects approved to then get the clients, let's say it's government, Transport for New South Wales, to even invest in that project. So then the next steps of that project lifecycle could be strategic design, options analysis, corridor analysis, and I'll give a real example of some of my experience in that. The New South Wales people on the call might be familiar with the new Western Sydney Airport. And even outside of New South Wales, it'll be one of Australia's biggest international airports. So that site has been flagged by the federal government. It's funded by the federal government. But to get there, we needed to design a brand new motorway. So that's pretty unheard of, to do a greenfield project. So greenfield is, you know, where you're not dealing with many assets, many residences, many utilities, as opposed to a brownfield project. So when I was involved in the strategic route options for that, we essentially identify all the constraints, and then we get routes, and our programming, our engineering programming might identify 300 possible routes. Then we get themes, and then we bring in the community and stakeholder engagement team, and then we start processes around engaging with the community to identify where their preferences are, weigh that with the economic situation, what the commercial and cost estimate reporting is telling us, and then the client packages that up and identifies an approval to go to the next gate. So then the next gate will be a concept design, the next gate will be a detailed design, and a project that I'm currently working on right now is a tender design. So with a contractor in a D&C environment, a design and construct environment, to then competitively tender for this work, to win it and design it fully and build the work. So we often might think an engineering consultant's work is done when a project is either fully designed or built. But let me tell you, it continues for the life of that asset. And there's a term around called milking the asset. So the performance of that asset, how can we get the most out of that asset? And that's it's a real I guess there's real emphasis from the governments, federal and state governments at the minute, around that, around being more sustainable, being frugal with our budgets, but getting the most out of our assets. So in that example, the operator of that motorway is, the adjacent motorway is Transurban. So they've got a 35-year concession against the state government to own and operate that motorway. So they are the asset owner, and then we do work for them to get the most out of their asset. And the very end of a project's life cycle that an engineering consultant can be involved in is demolition. That often doesn't happen in my field in roads and transport, but it certainly does happen in the mining and resourcing markets, the built environment markets. So overseeing the engineering, and the safety of that demolition, and then the rehabilitation of that site for whatever that site will be.
Awesome. And Marielle, did you want to give a rough rundown on what your day involves typically?
Marielle might be frozen. Oh no.
Okay, she might have a few technical difficulties. So while Marielle's sorting that out, let's hop over to Renny and hear what your day's like. And then we have a question from the audience for you as well, Renny.
Okay. So I guess the one thing I love about what I do at the moment is that uh, I said earlier that I've worked in operations for a long time, and what that means is when I was in water network operations, for instance, I'd walk in to my work, and a 500 water main would break. There would be a 500 water main that's just broken. Reservoirs emptying, and like we're rushing trying to fix that, and it's just like, and then within 2-3 hours, we've got the situation under control, and like it feels like nothing happened, and we're back to normal and doing our job. So I guess in the it's not so much about a day. I think it's just maybe the months of what it feels like to be a consultant. I love the fact that for me, I've worked on several projects and the learning curve is fantastic. You get thrown in and you need to know quickly. Not get thrown in as in like you're in, you're not prepared, but you get asked to go into a project and you have to quickly get up to speed with all of the background, and then you can do a few projects like that, or have maybe 2 or 3 running at the same time, and you get in maybe in the middle just to do a certain segment of it. But even if it's just that segment, you have to quickly get up to speed with all the background material. And I love that feeling of just being immersed and growing every single time I get into something. And to me, that's just like it just makes my days. It means my days are not the same. I just don't know what project I'll be in. I just don't know what I'll be facing in that month or in that day, and that's really exciting. But since moving into my secondment role in Sydney Water, I now have a position where I look after our net zero aspirations, and so that's more of a business as usual. I get to do something. I get to make progress on something, on the same similar things every day, more so than being on a different project every month or every 2 months, or working on multiple projects with new components coming up every so often. But yeah, it's nice to be able to have the opportunity to choose between that fast pace, continued professional development, getting right in there, just sinking your teeth and learning something completely new, and also having that flexibility to be able to say, for the next few months, I'm just going to be in this role where I do business as usual. I find that quite fascinating. And then the variety of clients as well is pretty incredible. I get to work for Sydney Water, which is an awesome company, but I've also worked across many other clients who are just great, and I get to see different sides of businesses, which really broadens my horizon. So yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Thanks, Renny. And we do have a question for you. So I'm just going to pop that up on the screen. So I was wondering if Renny could speak on her experience and journey as a POC in the STEM industry, and also what skills do you consultants need? So maybe the second half, the two of you can touch on that one, but the first half, Renny, would you like to answer that one?
What have I missed? What's the POC?
Person of color, Renny. I think we were going to cover that one later.
Yes, that's right. Oh, I'm so glad because I was definitely going to talk about this. I have to be honest that being a person of color does change how I do things. And it makes me work harder as a person and as an engineer because of the apartheid type bringing that I was raised in Zimbabwe and experienced incredible racism in my country. I inevitably have the sense that because I am a Black person or a person of color, that I have to go above and beyond what everybody else does so that I can be measured at the same level. It's something that I continue to feel and that I continue to apply for myself. So I don't know if that's necessarily always because it's necessarily true, but there are moments when I have come across some racism. But you know what I've learned from being in Zimbabwe, where it was very serious and quite intense, as opposed to being more in Australia, is that I've made a decision already that being a person of color and being a woman is not going to stop me from going after my dreams. I've made a decision that I will not be changing my name. I will not be hiding my face. I will not be doing any of those things just because I want to make myself more palatable to somebody who wouldn't want to have a person of color. I am going to be in your face as I am, with my braids, with my beautiful dark skin, with my opinions, because I want to be the best. I want to be known for being the best Renny I possibly can be. And if you choose me to work for you, if you choose me to be on your projects, it must be because the all of Renny showed up and you love that. And that's the only way I'll work for somebody, because I can't be half of me to anyone. And I guess that's that once I made that decision, it doesn't really matter how somebody perceives me or somebody doesn't like me within, a certain little context, as long as I continue to pursue what my personal mission is, I feel like I'm taken care of, but it doesn't stop me from speaking out when I need to. Like I remember, not in my current employment, but I remember once we were in a team meeting and somebody put a picture of a black face and made fun. And I'm not too sure if anybody's familiar with what a black face is, but it's in the acting world when uh, we needed to portray black people. White people would paint their faces as black so that then they would act as black people. But it was often not necessarily done in the way that was, appreciative of people of color. So, and made fun of that. And I had to take a step and say, listen, that's not okay. And actually have a conversation with that person and say, there are many things that I might let slide, but that is something that is just not okay. And in a time where Black Lives Matter have been saying so many things about people of color, they're just certain things that I need to educate you on, and that's not pleasant. And it was great. We had the conversation. Now people know what a black face is, and I managed to change that for the future. So yeah, I'll leave the other part of the question to others. Yeah.
Can I just add, Renny? I think something you said before, where I choose. Sorry for you to choose me to work on your projects, but you're the person that will be choosing where you work, and then that's the exciting thing about you and your career, and all of the experiences that you bring to what you do right now. No one can take away any of the good, the bad, the ugly experiences that you've had. But I think hearing you talk so positively about your career and your progression is that you take everything as learnings. And I guess I feel a bit sad on that last anecdote that you shared, in that you were the one that had to give the learnings. Ideally, we're creating environments in all of our industries where we've got allies left, right, and centre for every type of group that is representing what we do, and that other people will be pulling up and educating, those people. But good on you for doing that, taking it as a learning, and I'm sure that person is operating so much better. Now you can answer the second part of the question.
Okay. In STEM industry, and also what skills do consultants need? Oh, you know what? I feel like that one we will address it with with one of the other questions, because it might work best if we leave it until that. So if we don't answer it, we'll come back to it.
Perfect. Sounds good. Let's go on to the next question that we have. So we have a question, and I think we'll kind of speed through them a little bit faster as well, because we've still got a bunch to go through. So next question is, what is it like to be a woman in engineering? Renny, would you like to start? And then potentially Jane, you can answer that one, or we have another question for you after that, Jane.
Yeah, so I've got, so this is, I guess I've got a few dot points on this one as well. Because for me, as already been brought out, it's not just being a woman in engineering, it's also being a woman of color in engineering. And so I'll start off with my upbringing. As an African girl child, the expectation for me, even though my parents were incredibly supportive, my father was a wonderful man and gave me opportunity, to do all of the things. Like, it was his idea for me to get my pilot's license and things like that. They're just certain things that I didn't get a chance to do. For instance, I didn't get a chance to work with my dad in the shed and understand what tools and things like that were. Instead, I was helping my mom in the kitchen and in her business. And even when we helped in my parents' businesses, there were certain things that my brothers did that I didn't necessarily get a chance to do because it wouldn't have been appropriate for my culture. So I guess what that meant is that when I was going through university, I really struggled to understand. Like, I didn't know basic things, spanners, all these things that, most people may have been given opportunity to have. I didn't have a context of some of the engineering infrastructure that people were talking about in my classes and things like that. So I had to work extremely hard to get up to speed with that. The other thing is that if you get an opportunity to work there, more and more so within, the offices, you see there's much more equality and much more understanding of the role that women play. But sometimes if you work in the field and you actually get to go and do, assess water main breaks and different things like that, sometimes it's not usually a place where a female engineer is embraced. And in those spots, you have to really learn how to not to necessarily command your space, but to develop yourself so that you can be accepted in those circles. So what I remember doing when I first started, I asked people, what do you think I should be doing as an engineer to be successful? And I remember some of the field staff telling me, say, whenever you come into the field, don't be somebody who's like too scared of the dirt, too scared to help. And you know what I did? I decided, you know what? I'm going to spend some time in the field and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to ask them to teach me everything. I'm going to open gates, I'm going to carry water mains. And, I did all of those things so that I could build the rapport and the trust and the respect. And I don't know if that's necessarily just an expectation for women to do that or something that I put on myself, but I feel like that has embedded in me a different level of respect from those that I give advice to and things like that. There've been situations in the workplace as well, like if I'm coming back from the field and I'm carrying something heavy, the offer to carry that for me, I don't necessarily see that, my male counterparts being asked to do the same thing. Like, it's one thing if you meet your boyfriend who works with you and they want to help you, that's great. But in the workplace, it's not about that. I actually want to carry my own standpipes. I want to carry all of my equipment because that's part of my role. And I don't want to feel less by being asked not to do that. Having said that, though, there are times when I've learned that I need to learn to accept that maybe I don't necessarily always have the strength that a male counterpart has. Like, I remember once I had to go into the field and lay out and lock our hydrant valve boxes for the recycled water network. There were so many valves to lock, but after 7, 8, 9, I just couldn't do it. Literally, the strength to tighten those boxes was just, the mechanism was just too hard. I had to call and say, "Hey, field, I need some support. Can you send somebody to help me?" So it's that balance between I need to make sure that I've done my part and really made an effort to do my part and demonstrate that I am capable and competent, but also it's also taking the step back and saying, okay, well, sometimes I actually need the support and it's okay to ask for that. It's just, I guess it's knowing that we need to be treated equal. And then it's also knowing that if we're going to be treated equal, we also have the right to then ask for support when we need it. And that's okay. We shouldn't be judged for doing that.
I might add, Emily, there's some quite well-known statistics around the way or the difference that men and women broach certain subjects, and pay and promotions being one of them. And I think our audience would hear from the way Renny and I are speaking that we're relatively confident, and we'll certainly speak our minds and ask for help if needed. But there's a statistic that men only need to be 60 to 70% capable to apply for a promotion, whereas women like to be 120% capable, so overqualified. So that in turn in our industry can generate loud voices, people asking for promotion, people asking for opportunity, where in turn our female colleagues might not be doing that because they just don't think they're ready. So what we know in making sure that we have an equitable environment is that we've got champions and allies and managers, and our line managers are trained in all areas of culture and people to identify when this sort of behavior is happening. We don't always want to be responding to the squeaky wheel, like the noisiest person. We have got to assess people on merit, but also potential. That's a really important thing, because how can we apply ourselves or apply for roles that are brand new and we've never done or never been capable in that specific area of skill, if we've not done it before? So that's where the potential piece comes in. And identifying potential is a lot around advocacy. So we might hear about mentors, sponsors, and advocates. So in my experience, just getting involved in industry outside of Aurecon, getting involved in initiatives inside of Aurecon, growing that network of people that can become potential casual mentors, formal mentors, and advocates to really push for what they know you have the potential in, and to really aid that process in not being loud and screaming and asking for a promotion or a pay rise. So I think that's an important distinction in engineering, in consulting, between men and women as well. It's certainly not painting everyone with the same brush, but it is a known statistic.
Jane, you just reminded something I was going to say. Actually, I guess one of the key opportunities that we have here as well is to encourage, the next generation of women in industry to be supporters of each other. One of the things that is not as well spoken about is the number of women who don't support other women in the engineering space, who end up being jealous of their potential and keeping them down. So I guess, we've got challenges as women already in the industry. One of the key things is for us together to definitely be supporting one another. And I think that's it for me. It hurts more when I'm being kept down or not being mentored or coached by a woman who I'm so excited to be under, because for once, for once I'm being led by somebody who I'm like, oh my gosh, there is another one like me. It's so exciting. And then for that person not to acknowledge your potential and to want to develop you and say, we need more of you to be like me, is devastating. So I guess that's very critical. So women out there, when you get an opportunity to be leaders, when you're in the workforce, make sure you get alongside someone like you to help them along, because they need it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That's so much valuable insight there. I'd just like to talk about, this is a question for you, Jane. It's on how to get noticed by a potential employer.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Emily. I am involved in a lot of interviews and reviewing of candidates. And what happens in our, we're tier 1 consultants, so we've got big recruitment teams. They scan through all of the applications for both undergrad, grad, and other positions and present them to the hiring managers. So we already know that the candidates being put to us are top notch, have covered all the bases. And even though for undergrads and grads, I might be given an academic transcript, I never look at it. I'm not interested. I figure the recruitment team's done their job. I'm really interested in how you introduce yourself in a cover letter before I even bother going to your CV. I will always do a cross-check of a CV just to see if there's any interesting life experience, work experience, initiatives or committees you might have been involved in at university and whatnot, and voluntary experience. That's really important as well. But just that flavor, that spice on the way that you introduce yourself. And also, and Australians, we're not very good at this because of tall poppy syndrome, but what makes you unique? What is your differentiator? And how do you celebrate that? I'll give a really quick example of myself and one quick reflection of Renny. Renny as a Zimbabwean pilot, you're not going to come across too many of them that are applying for an engineering role. Bloody celebrate it. What have I learned in the skills that I learned being a pilot and training to be a pilot, and also growing up in Zimbabwe, which is very, very different culturally to where I'm now applying for jobs in Australia. In my instance, my passion was sport. I actually competed at the London 2012 Olympic Games in water polo. And speaking about that tall poppy syndrome, Australians, we're not good at celebrating our own successes. But I've learned through lots of mentoring and coaching, and also helping other athletes and people that just have extracurricular interests, artists, musicians, and whatnot, how to really celebrate that. There will be very few Olympic medalists that apply for engineering roles. So why the heck shouldn't I celebrate that? And there's certainly a way to be humble about it. But that's my spice, that's my difference, that's my differentiator, that's what makes me unique. I know that my cover letter isn't going to be a whole page about sport, but just introduce, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, this is what floats my boat, and this is why I'm interested in working for you. Another really critical thing, and I actually sent our recruitment team a note to say, I'm not going to look at these 3 candidates, because they didn't even, and this is just in the last week, they didn't even address their letter to Aurecon. They said nothing about our company. It was all about them. So there's very little effort made by those potential candidates in just putting effort in and identifying why I might want to work for you and why you might be a great fit for me. It's really easy to go onto all of these organizations' web pages, have a quick scan of their projects, have a quick scan of their initiatives, what's important to them, where their focuses are. And if candidates don't go to that level of effort, then I immediately have just something in my brain just struggles. If they've got a killer CV, I might be able to reconcile that. And another very quick anecdote: when I was managing our Newcastle office, I received a group email with other business leaders of not just other competitors, consultants, contractors, clients. Like, it was, I think there were about 30 people. And I just wrote, I wanted to give this undergrad some feedback, and just said, that is really not a good look. You haven't personalized it to me. You haven't personalized it to Aurecon. You've said nothing about, why do you think working as a consultant for ARTC would be the exact same as working for Hunter Water? And we've all heard, Rennie's reflections, working for an authority, a water authority. And this potential candidate really didn't take that feedback lightly. But I would really encourage you all to, if you do get any feedback, be gracious in that feedback. I'm not sort of being mean. I'm really genuinely trying to help you get a job next time, because I don't think it's going to work this time if you go about it that way.
That is so amazing, Jen, because I remember when I was looking for work, it is the hardest thing to get feedback. And when somebody's generous enough to give you feedback, that is just gold. And I just want to highlight what Jane was saying about having research. I remember when I was applying for jobs, and I wasn't working, and somebody said to me, "Oh, what have you been doing all the time?" I was like, actually applying for a job is actually a full-time job if you're going to do it properly. Because every single company that I applied for example, I'll just give Hunter Water, for instance, I had read every single tab on their website, including could quote what numbers they had done the previous year. When I walked into the interview, I had a mind map of where and how I could fit in based on their values. I knew when their birthday was, their celebration. Like within 5 minutes of the interview, when you start working with us, that was a response because I was so prepared. I came in with a big chart, and my mom was laughing. She's like, "You went in with a big chart." I said, "Yeah, mom. It's a now or never moment." So, and the thing is that when you're going to do that quality of research, you look at the list of engineering firms that you want to work for, and then you make a decision, because you can't put that level of effort and that quality of application into each and every company. You have to be very selective, because it takes a lot of work to deliver those high quality resumes and cover letters. The other thing that I want to say is personal branding is absolutely powerful. For instance, for me, I'd gone through some lessons on how to be, attractive on LinkedIn. I created my LinkedIn profile. My LinkedIn profile and my CV matched. And I found people within the organization that I was applying for, read the profile of those people, and tried to make my CV match the role based on the person who was working already there. Like the level of effort that you go into and the amount of, research that you put in means when you walk into the interview, not only are you so confident, but sometimes actually you're teaching the person who's on the other side of that interview some of the things that they don't know about the company. And there have been many occasions where I've walked in and said, "Oh, you know our values better than we do. I actually didn't know they won that award." "Really? We did? When?" I said, "Oh yeah, just yesterday I saw it." And it makes a big difference. Already they feel like you are part of them. Yeah, so yeah, that's important.
I will add, and this one might be a bit unfair, but network, and I've spoken about sort of industry network and internal network, is really important. But when you're looking for a job, if you have a network or you can work on it, and any introduction or referral to an organization or a hiring manager or a team or whatnot, even a friend from uni, really does count. If someone that's already in the organization can advocate for you, not necessarily in an engineering technical remit, but just a character reference, for instance, that sort of can be pushed up to the top of the pile for consideration, because that then comes through the business technical teams, rather than it coming through our recruitment teams, who are dealing with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications. And yeah, like, I guess as a hiring manager, I am really interested in talent that's out there. So I'm going to university events. I'm talking at things like this. And I appreciate this one is a virtual one, so it's hard to meet people. But if you are looking for work and you're attending, events like this, and then you go to an interview, or even in your cover letter as part of your application, you can even say, I met Renny at this event and was really inspired by her story about this. Just like that really little flavor that you already are connected into the organization that you're applying for.
Awesome. I think a bunch of great tips there. And yeah, networking really is key, isn't it? And like you said, Renny, applying for jobs is a full-time job. I definitely knew that when I was applying for jobs. Okay, so there is another question that I have. This one's actually for Marielle, so we'll just see if she's able to answer it. Marielle, I just have a question about any tips and tricks you had that helped you during your degree. We'll see if she's able to answer this one. Doesn't seem to be the case. That's okay. I'll move on to the next question I had. So the other one we had, which is for everyone, was how has past work experience helped you develop skills that can be used in your job today? And we'll just kind of go through this one a little bit quicker because we do have a question in the audience still to answer and a couple more that we should go through.
You go, Renny.
Yeah, whoever
Okay. Yeah, I guess this will also answer the other question that we had left out before. I guess I just want to say, I won't talk necessarily about the key engineering skills and experience, because I think there's some other things. Jane had just alluded to, when you're doing a pilot's license, Renny, what skills did you learn? And those are some of the things I just want to walk through quickly and step through. Like, for instance, when I was a pilot's, when I went to flying school, I remember sitting in my course, and it was all a male-dominated course. And on top of that, the Zimbabwean National Army was training at the same time as I was. And they didn't come in dressed in their, everyday clothes. They came in dressed in their army gear. And, as an 17, 18-year-old girl, it is just the most intimidating thing ever to see these guys come in, and they just exude confidence, and they just talk up like they know absolutely everything. To add to that, it wasn't just the normal everyday and the army. There were also international students, because Zimbabwe was the cheapest country at the time to get your license. And so very soon in that course, I realized if I want to pass, I'm going to have to learn a few things. I need to be able to have the confidence to ask the questions that I want in the room, regardless of what the reaction is, army or not, And I also needed to then make sure that I do the work so that I don't get left behind. And then the other thing was, and I did the work, I knuckled down, I got the job done, I graduated very quickly out of the class, and I left others still going through, I guess. And then the other thing was, whilst I was flying as well, it gave me a bit of a clue that I liked flying, but I also really loved the way, engineering, science and technology work together, to produce thrust, how thrust, lift, and all these things work together to produce flight. So I guess what I'm trying to get at in that is that the little jobs that don't necessarily look like highly technical for undergrads, and as you're working through your life, they actually have a really powerful skill that you're learning and acquiring. Also, I'll talk about one more thing about my modeling, for instance. Being a model means that you go into an event and you pretend to be somebody you're not. So if they ask you and say, hey, pretend to be, a mom with 3 kids, or you're a fan at a sports stadium, or, you get to go and be in a music video for a day, or you get to go act in The Great Gatsby, or different things. I get to do so many things, right? But also the back end of that story is that the other side of the engineering world is that it's very much based on how you look. And people tell you why they're not going to buy what you're selling. When you're too tall, your nose is too big, your arms are too long. So you need to learn how to walk out of that and say, you know what, they didn't like me this time, that's okay. Whatever was important for me to take away from that moment, I take away from that moment, and I walk away and I go into the next one. When I go into the next one, everybody's like, oh my gosh, I love your nose, I love your limbs, they're great, So it's just this all of these little jobs, it may have been working in retail, it may have been whatever you've done so far, there are skills that you've learned. Don't underestimate the power of that. My resilience and the ability to stay in the room despite how intimidating somebody is has been one of the most important things for me at interviews, in talks like this, for instance. I feel like I've learned how to own my space. So just don't underestimate the soft skills that you get from the not necessarily really technical stuff. One of the things when I was hiring at Hunter Water, our undergraduates and our interns, one of the things that I realized, and that's very powerful, some of those things you can't train, but the skills and the technical nitty-gritties, I can teach somebody that. So yeah, I guess that's.
I'll add to that. I've helped some candidates with just their CV writing, and just that skill transfer, and it's a big feature that we have in sport as well. What are the transferable skills? And rather than just the really high level teamwork, high performance teams, but blah blah blah, get into the nitty gritty of it. Like, what did you actually do that is going to help this engineering design team perform better? And some really quick ones on the top of my head would be absolute feedback in real time, 360 degree, doesn't matter if superior, peer, whatnot. And that's actually a really important thing in engineering. We love to give positive feedback, but are so fearful of giving less than positive feedback. And you might do the positive sandwich and whatnot, say something nice, and then give the real feedback, then say something nice to close it off. But something as basic as that is absolute second nature, and you might have 3 seconds to give the feedback in a game of water polo, for instance. But that is really one of my strengths in engineering, and people tell me that. Just not being fearful of being able to provide feedback in any direction. Another one, and Renny touched on this right at the start, was not being scared to ask for help. And I think this may also come into the gender piece a little bit. I think sometimes when we're trying to prove ourselves, you might be keen to be stuck in this technical skill or technical problem, and it might take you half a day. Whereas if you just use your network, ask for some guidance, you might get the answer in 10 minutes. And it's not to sort of shortcut your development, but just to quickly say, am I going on the right path? This is what I'm thinking. But yeah, that's certainly been something that has been identified as a strength of mine as well, is just having no shame. I do not feel shame if I don't know how to do something. And I'll utilize and leverage my network to help me get there. I think the question, Emily, was around some technical skills as well, and Renny really touched on the non-technical, and that's where I focus as well. But I suppose engineering degrees really prepare us for first principles, and that's always a great thing to rely upon. But the digital skills and the digital programs and platforms that might, do something that would take us a week in 5 minutes, it's really important that we all upskill digitally. And something really of interest to me on anyone's CV is what their the digital programs that they either have proficiency in or knowledge of is of great interest. It's not it is a desirable. It's not a must have. But yeah, if you don't have any, and I'd be surprised in universities in this day and age, people using the Bentley suite and Autodesk suite and whatnot. So yeah, certainly make sure that you do highlight those digital skills.
Yeah, that's great. And you know what, Jane, as well, something also that's quite that's been quite valuable is the ability to be able to follow some trends. Like I hinted at being on LinkedIn a moment ago, but then let's just say you're on LinkedIn and you follow the companies that you like. What you'll learn is that they'll be doing projects or having focus or discussing some key foci as well, around what they're doing. Sustainability is really important. Net zero is really important. Jane has talked about digital skills, and so if you're even just listening to the news with just that um, a perspective of gaining an understanding of what the government is doing or what the trends are, those sort of things can give you a bit of an idea of, okay, so I am in chemical engineering, but guess what? If when I graduate, I would really want to be working in the energy sector. How do I make sure that maybe the course that I pick has a hint of that? Or maybe I'm going to work as a research assistant in my second year with that professor who's doing a lot of energy things. So it's just remaining in tune, in line with what the trends are around the world, that's quite helpful as well. And looking out on what companies are doing, that gives you a bit of a hint, because a lot of the things that, like Jane was talking about, having done the research, a lot of the things that I wrote in my resumes, I picked up based on what the company had said they're doing. Like my research at the time was on desalination and waste and harnessing waste to heat energy in my last year. At the time when I was applying, there were really talks about, energy. There were really talks about desalination. I was like, I did that research. I make sure that gets put into my resume and goes at the very top of my CV dot points, because I want them to know that I'm into desalination like they are, those sort of things. So yeah, that research piece also gives you a bit of a hint around what skills you should be trying to acquire and what skills to chase after once you get into an organization. You might get into the organization and you don't necessarily write that on your resume, but then you realize that it is emerging and you need to wiggle your way, your trajectory in that organization, wiggle your way to the things that you know are going to take you to that particular goal.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Let's answer a question from the audience just quickly, and then I think we have like 2 more questions to wrap up. I'll just pop it up on the screen. So it's just here, as an electronics engineer, which area, like building, transport, environment, energy, is more suitable as a consultant?
It really depends where your passions lie. So an electrical engineer can very easily cover 3 of those 4. I'd probably struggle a bit more in environment, just because the energy market covers renewables as well and future energy. So the suitability is just around your preference, and just make sure that you look at the available job positions in the organizations, and you'll no doubt see that they are really varied across all different markets.
And what I'll just add to that as well is I know at the moment that a lot of what no, I won't say that. One of the things that I've learned about an engineering degree and the power of engineering degree is the ability to be transferable across many sectors. Don't feel like you go into an organization and just because you're an electronics engineer, you stay within the confines of that. Feel free to just start somewhere and then allow your mentors and your coaches to guide you. I was a process engineer who hasn't really done any process. Went into water network engineering, where water and network operations, where there was only civil engineers. Then I went in and I did the 24-hour response, which takes care of all of the water assets from dams through to catchment and vice versa. In the treatment space, from treatment to the customer's tap. I never thought that as a process engineer I would do that side of things, controlling the systems. I thought maybe I'd have to have more I'd need to be more digitally savvy and have programming or things like that. There's so many things that the thinking of an engineer that just allows you to be able to be quite successful in some of those areas. So do not limit yourself if you have a passion to explore something. Our careers and our engineering background gives us so much power and capacity as long as you're willing to do the work to learn once you get in that space.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So we've got 2 more questions to wrap up. This next question is for everyone, so I'll just add Marielle stream. Okay, so the question is, what does career progression look like? And we'll start with Jane for this one, but then we'll open it up to everyone, and then we'll move on to our final question.
So career progression is every kind of direction you can think of. And you really need to be that sponge that Renny was talking about, to know where might interest you. In my experience, it's been saying yes to opportunities that are not necessarily my day job, not what I'm getting paid to do. They could be internal committees, Engineers Australia committees, speaking at events, making those networks, and then getting that advocacy that I spoke to before for people to suggest, Jane, why don't you try this? Or to suggest to my managers, I think Jane's good for that role. And that's really been my career to date. I think in the introductions, I said I've had quite an opportunistic career where I've just taken the opportunity as it's presented itself. There are certainly people that are more technically minded than me that will sit within a stream of technical engineering. And we make a really good effort to make sure that there's promotional opportunities, development opportunities through those streams as well. I've sort of dipped in and out of those technical streams into operations, leadership, management, and project delivery. So yeah, I think the question was, what does career progression look like? It's going to be so different for every one of you. I often will get asked, what's your 5-year plan? I have got no idea, because what the past has dictated is that what I'm doing now is very different to what I thought I would be doing as well. So I'm not saying don't sort of get your 1, 3 and 5 year plans sort of in your head, but I wouldn't spend too much effort on it, especially being so, in the infancy of your careers. If you get your undergraduate position or your graduate position, just go with the flow. I guess, we spoke about future energy and renewable energy. That might be a real passion area for you, but you might be in a job in the transport department of your organization. You can always have that sort of in the back of your mind. You can start to make connections over there. And there will be transport projects that go and connect to renewables, just for the infrastructure that's required. So there's often ways that your passions and what you are good at and what you're doing day to day can align. And that's also when you can sort of skip around a little bit, maybe change. Lots of organizations have grad rotations. You can identify other areas that you may be interested in. But yeah, I think that the key takeaways from me would be, say yes to opportunities, but grow that network so that more opportunities can present themselves.
Renny, did you want to take that one? And then we'll head over to Marielle.
Yeah, I guess I want to add another side to the taking opportunities. For me, I guess I live with a personal mission statement. So that personal mission statement for me defines what I say yes to and what I say no to. So there is a nice balance between saying yes to an opportunity and also knowing, oh, that doesn't actually quite line up with what fundamentally my core is feeling. So it's almost like you have a sixth sense about what the next step should be, even though, because you know what, like there's so many opportunities that present themselves sometimes. And in making that decision, you almost need a guiding principle to be able to say no to some when you have the opportunity to do so. So as a graduate, you'll get your rotation and there'll be some things that are set, but there's also that ability for you to use that sixth sense. The other thing that I want to say is we talk about mentoring and we talk about coaching, and sometimes we think that that's one person. The other thing that I want to say to you and challenge you is coaching and mentoring isn't just one person. It's about picking one key thing that you like about somebody, learning that skill and maybe learning how they've navigated a little corner of their lives, and then looking internally and saying, okay, how can I apply that in the trajectory that I feel lines with the mission statement that I have, yeah, so it's a fine balance. I know you are just starting your career and you're young in your career. It's worth maybe taking a moment of your time, if you can, just to kind of decide what that mission statement is, that you decide that will give you a bit of a compass around what you say no to and what you say yes to. But yeah, use that sixth sense to guide you a little bit. The other thing is, I want to say, you're going to meet more great people than you're going to meet bad people. But something that nobody really told me is that there are people who are also willing to lead you astray in making a decision. So make sure you're listening to somebody who's actually going to give you good advice, who cares fundamentally about who you are and you developing as an engineer, because there are some people who just sometimes may not necessarily care enough about you to give you the right advice. So yeah, that's where that sixth sense and that guiding principle plays a part.
Awesome. Marielle?
Marielle? Can everyone hear me? Apologies, I've had a few technology issues. I thought I was quite digital savvy going off what Jane said before, but unfortunately this streaming site's deemed otherwise. Career progression, that's, really good question, because I think everyone has a different career progression. As Jane and Renny touched on, I started out on site. I got a job as an undergraduate site engineer, just because it was the first job offer with engineering that came across my plate. So I was like, yeah, sure. I was end of first year university, and I was like, yeah, I want to get out there. So I started there, and then I learned after a while that I saw my career going more in project management direction, because I was more curious about how things work, the coordination, the planning, all the, I suppose, project management elements that I didn't know was project management at the time, but then I started to learn more about it through university. We had a subject on project management, and I realised I was acting as the project manager for a lot of my university groups. So then, my career progression completely switched from undergrad site engineer to project manager at GHD. And then I looked more towards similar to what Renny and Jane were saying, what I was interested in, what I wanted to do, what I felt that I could give back to in the community. So I started off on some big transport projects, but then I thought, how can I actually help with my project management and engineering skills towards something that I feel passionate about? And a public housing program came across my desk, and I was like, yes, I want to give back in that sort of way using my knowledge and skills. And it was an international project as well, and I always wanted to work internationally as well. So then my career progression completely switched in the sense that I had international experience. So you just never know, and as Jane mentioned, you just have to go with the flow. There is, I suppose, some sort of standard career progression as an engineer or as a project manager, but you can adapt it and switch it up as where you see fit, and guided by team leaders or mentors along the way.
Awesome. So I just want to wrap up with our final question, and then we'll touch on what job opportunities there are at GHD and Aurecon. So let's talk about final question, which is, what advice do you have for women interested in engineering / women in engineering right now who are studying? We'll start with Jane, then we'll go Renny, and then Marielle.
Where my brain has immediately gone to is probably pre-university, but I think it's important to consider through your studies and then the start of your career. So engineering when I went through, had the biggest dropout rate at uni, just because it was sort of this unknown. It also used to celebrate itself as an industry really well, especially in the built environment space and the big project space. And you'd think of some really big bipartisan supported projects, such as the Snowy Hydro Scheme and Sydney Harbour Bridge, for instance. These huge projects that had the commercial, political, and community support for future-proofing for such big projects. But engineering is not just about these huge infrastructure, iconic things that are shiny and look really good on a CV. Engineering has a lot of a softer side, and that bit doesn't get celebrated so much. There is evidence in the research of sort of the gender split as well. And if we could celebrate engineering in the social impact, the environmental impact, sustainability, climate change, essentially aligning to all of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we would really appeal to many, many more women to join engineering and or stay in engineering. So because we're talking to a cohort that's already studying and looking for jobs, I think it's important for you to, if those areas are important to you, they are important to us and they are important to our clients as well. And there's certainly opportunity for you to harness that passion and the weight that you put around that importance of those issues to include them in how you progress your career and the types of projects that you get involved in. You might think, and in my instance, I'm managing a motorway widening project at the minute. But because of the floods in New South Wales in the last 2 years since the bushfires, there has been such a focus and an emphasis on climate change risk and sustainability. So all of a sudden, our scope is growing to include this quite new area of engineering. And that sort of not, it's not about getting the warm and fuzzies, because that's what's important to me. It's how is that impacting community, and how can I really make this come aligned with and consolidate with my engineering career progression. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to make sure I didn't get a chance to do this earlier. I just want to make sure that I just say, honestly, congratulations to you guys, because you are the students and the graduates who went through COVID and got to the other side and did a great job to be at this moment looking for work. You missed out on the touching base with lecturers like we did and we experienced, corridor conversations with your peers and stuff. So yeah, it's really awesome that we get an opportunity, I guess, as all of us, to just celebrate you for where you're at the moment. I guess I've got 4 pieces of advice that I want to make sure I pass on. And I want you to remember these, not necessarily just through this application period, but I think for your whole career. Okay, so one thing that I had written down that was really life-changing for me was remembering that I should never let my marks, my past failures, my shortcomings stop me from trying to achieve my dream or going after that role. The other thing that I've learned is that I should never let any ceiling define who I am and how far I go. I am not too black, I am not too green, and I'm not too woman to go after what I want to. So I'm going to dare to do that regardless of what people say about that. The other thing is that I've learned that I'd like you guys to remember is that do not apologize for being yourself. Every time you choose to be yourself, you're giving somebody permission to be themselves and you're liberating them to be who they were destined to be. The other thing that I've learned, and that is really quite powerful for me, is that I need to make sure that I surround myself with people who inspire me, people who inspire me to go after my dreams, and people who will mention me in a room full of opportunities. If you find people like that, your life will be set. Yeah.
All right. Did you want me to follow on from Jane and Renny? I think three pieces of advice that have come to mind. And I think the first one is go for it. I've learned from my past experiences that I regretted the times I didn't put my hand up, or I didn't have a go, or didn't try more than the times I did. And yes, I might have embarrassed myself or fallen on my face or have some technology issues like today, for example. But I think if you just persevere and just keep getting up, brushing yourself off and going for the next opportunity, you'll find that you'll look back and you'll be like, oh, I'm grateful for those times that I actually went for it, even though maybe I wasn't 100% confident in what I was going to achieve with it. But it really builds up and builds you up as a person overall. And leading from that, I think back yourself is a really key one. My experience and from what others I've spoken to, other female engineers or female project managers, is that we're sort of I suppose brought up sometimes into not expressing ourselves as as we don't want to be arrogant or we don't want to be overly confident. As females, we don't want to take up too much space. Some of the societal, I suppose, impacts. But I think it's really important to back yourself from that, because when you back yourself, you're giving other females I suppose the example of how you're backing your ideas, making sure that you've researched and you've thought about what you're saying and what ideas you're putting on the table. But I think it really inspires myself when I see women back themselves in a room full of men. It's made me have the confidence to do so. So I think backing yourself, especially in such a male-dominated industry and disciplines such as engineering, will really get you a long way, especially as a graduate. And my last piece of advice is that university isn't everything. As Jane was saying, she doesn't even look at the transcripts of people that come across her desk. Yes, do your best, get the best marks you can, but it's really important to have that all-rounder nature about yourself. So whether that's participating in something like Engineers Without Borders, the Female Engineer Society at your university, doing some work experience along the way. It's really important to just remember university isn't everything, and think of it like high school. High school isn't everything as well. So it's similar to that, and it's more getting that all-rounder experience that recruiters and companies are looking for these days.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for the advice. So to wrap up today's session, I'm just going to pop the QR codes on the screen as well as the social links for Aurecon and GHD. And we also have some engineering consulting careers advice here. So there's a bunch of resources there if anyone wants to scan them. Make sure you take a screenshot or scan right now or note them down. While we're just wrapping up, I just want to talk to get Renny and Marielle to just share what opportunities there are at Aurecon and GHD, any open jobs, things like that. So Renny, would you like to start?
Yeah, that's right. I'm excited to say that Aurecon's applications for both graduates and internships are open at the moment. We have a 12-week paid internship starting at the end of November. You don't have to wait until that far along to actually apply. You can apply right now, and we're assessing those applications as they're being received. Graduate applications will open for the next 4 weeks, and internship applications will close on the 28th of August. Yeah, we really look forward to having you as part of Aurecon. And myself and Jane now. Find us on LinkedIn. And thanks.
And for GHD, the summer intern applications are currently open. So they close on the Sunday, the 14th of August. So only, I think that's less than 2 weeks away. And GHD are looking to take 250 interns over the summer across Australia and New Zealand. So to find those applications, you can head straight to the GHD profile page on Grad Australia. All the intern roles are advertised there, or go on the GHD careers page. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to myself. We also have some additional graduate roles that we're starting to look for next year. So they're mostly for civil engineers in WA and in Queensland, but there's also some opportunities in Victoria and other states. So yeah, please reach out if you don't find a role on the Grad Australia page or the GHD page, as we may be able to find an opportunity for you. And yeah, that's the main roles we have coming up for GHD. There's also quite a few project management roles open at the moment. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to connect you with the right people for a project management role, or even any other role you're looking to get into at GHD.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Sorry, there we go. Just muting the mics because a bit of audio lapping. Okay, so, well, that was the end of today's session. So thank you so much to our three speakers. I think there's been so much valuable advice, and it's definitely been really inspirational, even from me to hear, not even from an engineering background. So it's awesome to hear what you guys had to say today. There was a bunch of valuable things answered. So for anyone who is watching, just make sure you check out Grad Australia and set up a profile, and then you'll get notified of any open job opportunities. And you can also, apply to any jobs that Aurecon and GHD have available. There's also a bunch of other resources on there. So for example, there's day in the life videos, there's employer, there's graduate stories as well, there's advice blog posts, there's so much information on there that will really help your application, help you figure out, what you want to do and whatnot. So so make sure you check that out, and also share our Grad Australia Career Talk webinars with anyone you know. We actually have them about 2 times a week, and we have them on so many different topics. So we have, engineering, tech, sales, business, marketing, literally anything. We also have, general topics like how to build a CV, how to maximize your graduate career. So make sure you're following our socials and sharing that with any of your friends or anyone you know. Next week, we actually have a webinar on engineering in the government. So if you're interested in that, make sure you tune in. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can contact Grad Australia via email. Let us know if you have any questions and whatnot. And if you want to watch back this video, just head to our YouTube page. You can check it out there. We'll also be turning it into some shorter clips so you can watch specific topics as well in the coming weeks. So yeah, that's all from me today. Thank you so much to our speakers for coming on, and thanks for everyone for watching as well.
Thanks, everyone. Lovely to meet you all.
Thanks, everyone.